Welcome to Spaghetti on the Wall, where we throw ideas, see what sticks, and nurture those that do. I'm your host, Armando Leduc, an actor, entrepreneur, and coach, giving you insights that light up your world. We're here to explore the realms of business, marketing, and life, serving up a shot of inspiration with every episode. Ready to make ideas stick and grow them into something great? Let's dive in. On this computer. All right, we're recording.
All right.
When you are ready. Are you ready?
Hey, man. Get it started.
Buenos dias, gente. This is, once again, the Armando Leduc Show. Today I have Mr. Louis Scott from Scott, or is it Bader Scott? Or Scott
Bader
Bader?
Scott.
Bader Scott Law Firm right there in Atlanta, Georgia. If you guys are in Atlanta, I'm sure you've seen his face all over on the billboards. This dude is everywhere. He's killing it. We grew up together back in high school, so we've known each other for a long time. And so I'm really impressed.
23 years, right?
23
years.
Is it 23?
Yeah. Or no,
Yeah.
24 years.
I moved to Georgia in 95. When did you move to Georgia?
95.
95 too. Okay, so same.
Yeah.
So same. Yeah.
Same time. Yeah.
23 years, man. That's a long time to know somebody, especially Army brats.
That's true.
Because a lot of people, you move every 3 years and then boom, you don't get to see anybody.
Mm-hmm.
So be able to be friends with somebody for that long is impressive. But I also think that social media makes it a lot easier these days.
That's right. I agree.
But kudos to you, man. I got a chance to see your law firm when I was up in Atlanta shooting a Coca-Cola spot. So look out for that. But I knew you were successful, but when I saw your firm, I was like, damn, all right, the dude
it's a real business.
It's successful, right? It's successful.
Right.
And I was like, man, I really want to tap into, what you're doing and how you're doing it, and just, kind of ask you questions. And I think this is going to go really well. So I think we might make a bunch of these videos because, I just want to tap your brain for knowledge, because I think you stay consistent, you stay learning. You're not somebody that's complacent, that just kind of sits on his laurels. Even though you're successful, you continue to want to learn. And, I think that's the key, right?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. Like the thing is that it never stops. And it's crazy because I remember being in high school and even college, just hating to study and hating to learn. And then as soon as I get out of college is when people start saying, well, you got leaders or readers, you got to keep growing. And I wanted to make money, so I had to do whatever it took.
Right. But I feel like that's the problem with school these days, is that they don't really have a direction for entrepreneurs.
Mm-hmm.
They want to throw everybody through the same sort of system that doesn't really work. You know what I mean? Like for myself, I think I graduated with a 2 point something. You know what I mean? Not because I'm a dumb guy. I just was like, when am I going to use algebra? Miss what was her name? Miss Baston. Miss Baston.
Right.
Like, Armando, you will use algebra. I was like, I will never use algebra. I promise you I'll never use algebra. And I'm 40 years old, and I can say I've never used algebra yet.
Yeah.
I might.
Yeah.
I doubt
I don't know if you've seen that meme where it says, it usually comes out around tax season, where it says, I'm so thankful that I took the class on parallelograms, because right now parallelogram season's kicking my butt. It's funny how, we do feel like those things are not going to help us in the future. And, to make a point about the gauntlet, I think maybe you said that word, or maybe I thought the word, but we take everyone from an educational standpoint through a gauntlet that is very similar. You take your curriculum, everyone takes the same curriculum, everyone takes the same courses. If you're in a particular major, or if you're in high school and you do college prep versus vocational, everyone takes the same courses. And what we're preparing people to do really is to fail, because at the end of the day, when you do that, you're not really enhancing the skill sets of every individual student. Maybe there's not a way to do it at the younger levels in college, but it doesn't really set you up for the real world, which is a world where jobs that you've never even heard of exist. I remember thinking when I was a legal assistant prior to becoming a lawyer, if I would have known that there was a legal assistant course or a paralegal school at a younger age, imagine what I could have done during that time period, just learning that and becoming successful in that. I find this out later in life. So sometimes we I think school is good to enrich you, but it's definitely not going to make you rich.
Right. I think I heard somewhere where somebody had said school or college is A students teaching B students to work for C students.
Right.
You know,
I can see that. Yeah.
and it's do you know what your GPA was when you graduated?
From high school or from undergrad?
High school.
High school. Oof. It was at least a 3.0 because I got the Hope Scholarship, but I'm not sure if it was, I don't know where on the scale it was. I know in college it was like 3.3, and the only reason I know is because I needed it to get into law school.
Right.
So I had like a 3.3 in college, but I can't remember what it was in high school, but it was definitely a 3.0. So
yeah. Did you know I failed Spanish 1?
wow.
I failed. Let me tell you why, right? Miss Weimer at the time. And if you're watching,
she may watch this later.
Yeah, if you see this, Miss Weimer, you are so wrong for doing it. But you did teach me a lesson, and I'll tell you what it was. But so in Germany, when I was a freshman, I took Spanish 2, right? Because I was like, I don't need Spanish 1. I speak Spanish, right? So they put me in Spanish 2. I got a B because I didn't do my homework, but I, aced all the tests. So when I moved to Harlem, Georgia, they didn't have Spanish 3, right? And they were like, oh, you need 2 years of a language in order to graduate college prep, right? So I was like, fine, I'll just go back to Spanish 1 and, dick off, right? So I go in there, I join Los Hispanos, right? Weren't you in that group? And we we sang songs and we, you know what I mean? Like I was all involved in like the community organizations of Los Hispanos in Harlem and all of that Miss Weimer was putting on. And we were friends, did none of the homework, aced all the tests, right?
Right.
And she failed me. And I'm like, Miss Weimer, what? Why? You need to do your homework, Armando. You need to do your homework. I'm like, that is not how like the real world works. You know what I mean? Like it is all about the test. It's all about the deadline, right? It's all about at the time when you get, when you're getting your deadline in and your project, have you made it or have you not made it? Did you ace it or did you fail it? That's it. Like, doesn't matter the work you put in. It matters at the end, what's the end result? Now, being 40, you know what I mean, and understanding the amount of work that goes into a project, and not waiting till the last minute and, all of those things. Now I know, okay, yes, you've got to put in the work. However, if you know it, and you know that on the day you can ace it and you have to do all of this work, then, then you're wasting your time. You know what I mean? Like that's what I felt like.
But this is the interesting thing. I love that you bring this up because it made me think of our employees. We teach people in school that the process matters and that the result is not nearly as important, right? Because if you get a great result, but you didn't do the process, the homework, you don't get a good grade, okay?
Right.
And in the real world, it's actually backwards. The result is what matters. So I get a lot of employees who go through the process, maybe wait a year, come to their review, they didn't get the result, and they still want a raise or they want a bonus because they worked their year. The tenure was what was important. The process was what was important.
Right.
And I think we need to teach people that, yes, process is important. It's required. You need to have patience. But at the end of the day, the result is what matters. You getting the finished product.
That's right. At the end of the day, my clients, when I'm delivering a project, it doesn't matter if I spent 10 hours or if I spent 40 hours. Yeah. Right. At this point, I can spend 5 to 10 hours creating a video because I know all the shortcuts in editing. I know how to light a project properly. I know my ISOs. I know what glass I need to use. I'm not thinking about all of these things that have to go, that have to go into a finished piece. You know what I mean? Not to mention I have the experience of like how to edit something, what's, the finesse of and the art form of editing video, that takes time, but it doesn't. So at the end of the day, they don't care how long it takes. They want the finished product and they want it right. Right.
That's
so
right.
I'm still holding a grudge that I failed Spanish 1. I can't believe it. Especially when I was like a friend. I was like, I thought we were friends. I'm like, I'm doing all of these, like, you know, extracurricular things for you, and you still want to fail me. Like, that's some bull. Anyway, we'll move on. So, thing that I wanted to talk about today, and because I always like for these meetings to have some sort of a purpose, right? Especially meetings, if they don't have an agenda, I'm like, they could just kind of go on and on and on. So, thing that I want to talk about is you are not good at everything, right? And that's okay. But you need to learn how to sub that work out to people that know it better than you. And you were dropping some knowledge. Am I frozen? Did I freeze? Am I frozen now? Am I good? Can you hear me?
I can see you. I can see you pretty good. Yeah.
All right, here we go. Is this better now?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So you were dropping some truth bombs in Atlanta when I was up there on, like, you know, Armando, you've got a lot of things going on. You gotta, you know, you're sort of a visionary type, CEO type. So I kind of wanted you to, like, you know, talk about that a little bit and how you used that in your law firm and, you know, your partnership with your business partner and how that just skyrocketed y'all's business.
You know, and I'm going to talk to people who are entrepreneurs and people who are trying to start a business or have a business and they're becoming overwhelmed and frustrated, because that's where you see this the most, right? You have a person who's a visionary who really has the idea. He has a creative nature, maybe started the business on their own. And a lot of times they're everything. They do everything. They do the accounting, they do the billing, they do the sales, they do the marketing, they do the work, right? And as the business grows, they become much more incapable of actually doing all those things because it becomes overwhelming. It's too much work. There's too much to be done. And you have to realize as you grow what you're actually good at. You know, it took me a long time to come to grips with the fact that I'm probably not a CEO, right? That's a hard thing to accept when you own a business, is that you are not the CEO. You're not the true visionary. You're not the person who's going to drive the change. But what I realized in the process was that I was a COO. I was much more of an operations guy. I was much more of an implementer. I was much more, you know, the guy who came up with creative strategies to drive the business. If I would have held on to that visionary piece, if I would have held on to that CEO piece, the business couldn't have grown. And in the same way, if our CEO, who's my business partner, if he holds on to the operations piece, which is what I'm good at, then the business can't grow. So in our context, you know, we have a partnership, so we have split the duties now that we know what each person is good at. But before you get there, before you have a partner, maybe you start on your own, or before you have employees, you have to start identifying what you're good at, because the fact is you're not good at everything. So
preach. So then when you were working for another law firm, right? Because you don't practice law anymore.
Right.
You're a man. You managing partner. Like you're the guy that, like, makes the things go, right? So kind of talk about, like,
right. So I went to work at a law firm. I was a receptionist. You know, started from the bottom. Went as a receptionist. Was a translated for people. Then I got into kind of like the legal assistant space. Then I got into the marketing of the firm. I eventually went to law school, became an attorney, and then became the managing partner of that firm. And after about 14 and a half years, I went out on my own and started my own law firm. And that's when Seth and I really started having the dialogue about us coming together. Eventually, we decided to come together, and I came here and have been managing the firm since I came in. And yeah, I have not actually represented anybody in several years, because my main focus is, you know, our operations, our people. Between employees and contractors, we're around 150 people right now. So that's a full-time job at this point.
Yeah. Could you practice law still if you wanted to, like you're up to date and all that?
Yeah. I mean, I take my continuing legal education courses, and I'm up to date. And every once in a while I have to sit in on a case or manage a case. But in terms of the full management and practice of law, I'm not really engaged and focused in that. And, you know, just to go back to your original question, that was something I wasn't good at to begin with. You know, I people laugh when I say that, but, you know, I recognize that, yeah, I was a decent lawyer, but that wasn't like my skill set. That wasn't like my strength. you know, and I
Right.
was okay recognizing that.
So when you're looking for people
Mm-hmm.
to take over a sector of your business that you don't really maybe feel comfortable doing, don't want to do, how do you go about
Mm-hmm.
doing that?
Well, the first thing that you have to realize is how much time are you spending in that particular area. So that's the first thing you have to ask yourself. Right now, we're in the process of looking for a CFO. For about a year and a half, I've been the CFO of the business. In addition to being the COO, I do all the checks and billings and things related to settlements, and I check all our credit card statements. I sign all our checks, and I do all of our percentages, and I create the budget. And what I realized, it was just taking way too much time for me. I want to go back to the point that I said. My skill set is being a COO, right? That's what I am good at, and that's what I enjoy. Now, because I have an accounting degree, I was able to do the CFO part decently, but I'm not going to do it just, like a professional, because they're just better at it. And what I realize now is that it's taking me about 20 hours a week just spending on finances when I need to spend my time on operations. So I think the first part of identifying that you need someone is to take a measure of how many hours you're spending on that particular job that you don't enjoy doing. And usually if it's, 5, 6, 7, 10 hours that you don't enjoy doing, because that's the other component. You have to not enjoy doing it. That's how you know it's not your skill set.
Right.
If you don't enjoy doing it, you got to start looking to hire somebody, because if you don't, you're actually constraining your opportunity for growth in your business.
So then you have what you don't want to do. Do you
Mm-hmm.
put it on paper exactly like what the functionality is or the
Yeah.
job duties? And where do you put this, like monster.com or?
Well, no, I mean, once you figure out what it is that you don't like doing, then you ask yourself what job description would fulfill that, right? So in our case, I would need a CFO, high level CFO, to fulfill the job description that I need, because the person's going to write the budget, the person's going to monitor all of our performance, our profit, revenues, our P&L, things like that. That's more high level. So you figure out how many hours you're spending on something you don't want to do. You ask yourself what the job description is for that job to do the functions that you don't want. Because see, a lot of times what happens is we say, I don't want to do this, so therefore I need a director of operations. I'm doing consulting right now for law firms, and one of the law firms had asked me, when do I need a director of operations? Well, that's way far away, right? That you need a director of operations when you have an operation for them to direct. There has to be several leaders along the way. So sometimes we go right to the biggest position, and we really need to start with the smallest position. You may only need an office manager. You may only need you may only need an administrative assistant for all we know.
Right.
We need to figure out what is it that you want to take off your plate, and then create that job description. Then when you have that, I recommend that you try, different locations. I mean, monster.com, you can try ZipRecruiter, you can try as well. And if you have employees, I absolutely recommend that you ask your employees to provide you recommendations, because in today's environment, people want to work with people that they like, know, and trust, and that they enjoy working with. And usually a friend is someone they enjoy working with. And as long as they can maintain the professionalism in the job, a lot of times they bring in really good referrals as well.
That's a good idea. Give me 1 second, because I'm gonna switch my internet.
Okay.
That might be a little bit more stable. Yeah, more stable. Stability. Let's talk about stability. I'm just kidding. Can you see me? Frozen. Check. All right, it's frozen. 1 segundo. It should pop in.
Oh, I'm losing you.
And now, how about now? Is this working? No. Technology. Come on, technology.
I can see.
Oh, hello? Does this work?
I can see.
Okay, cool. We're on.
I can see you.
Stability. We were talking about.
I can hear you perfectly. You're just a little bit frozen on the screen.
Okay. I can see you good, and you're rolling good. So I wonder if that'll be okay on this, the recording end on my end. Should be, right? Because I'm recording it. Hello? Maybe I'll just switch back. Hold, please.
The thing is that when you're recording the session, it messes up with the internet because it's basically downloading it to the cloud. So that's
well, I set it to record in my computer.
Okay.
So that might change things, and we can cut all this stuff out.
Of course, yeah.
So ZipRecruiter, Monster.com. What was the other one?
Indeed.com.
What do you think about temp agencies?
I'm a big fan of temp agencies when you have projects, but here's the thing with the temp agency. You go into a temp agency, if the job requires a lot of training, you're going to lose a lot of time and money paying them to just train for a job that's temporary, right? So you have to ask yourself, how much training is involved for this particular job and how long do you need the job? If you only need the job 90 days, but it's going to take 45 days to train them, like, I don't know if that's even worth it. But it just depends on what the project is. So
when you train, obviously you have people that are managers that are training these people. How long does it usually take to train somebody, or that depends on the job, I guess?
It does depend on the job. We actually just hired a director of development who oversees our 4 parts of our business in terms of our legal subject matter, non-legal subject matter, customer service, and our software and technologies. And we have an orientation period of 2 weeks. From there, the person then goes into their subject matter training for another 2 weeks. And then we have a 2-week shadow period where they shadow another employee in the job that they were hired for. So it's a pretty extensive 6-week period. I'd love to see it 90 days, but the longer your training period is, the more time and money investment you're actually making into your employees before they produce for you. And so there has to be a balance of the need that you have, the resources that you have to pay, and the amount of time that you have before you need them to start producing. And for us, the longer we can pay, the longer that we can train them, the more likely it is that they'll get to their 1-year anniversary, which is a huge benchmark for employees. If you get them to 1, it's easier to get them to 2. And so we want to make sure we train them so that they feel good and comfortable with our culture, with our process and what we do, and to buy into the vision and mission, which is another part of really scaling up.
Let me ask you this. If I were to, because I'm thinking about doing this, I've got it outlined. I've got a course that I've taken for Leduc Entertainment, my production company, right? From my marketing to lead generation to my CRM, how I'm putting them through the sales process, and then the entire thing, right? The whole pipeline from beginning to end.
Right.
So I'm going to use that as a course for other filmmakers around the United States that want to run a profitable production company. But I'm also thinking about, could I use this course as a means to train somebody as well?
Yeah. I mean, if you're asking me if that's a good idea, absolutely. I'm a huge proponent of recording myself teaching something and then giving it to someone else to watch, because once you've taught it one time and you give it to somebody to watch, you don't have to do it again, you know? So I do a lot of presentations, especially PowerPoint. I've really learned that I love PowerPoint. I do these PowerPoint presentations. I'll do them on Zoom. I'll record myself in the corner and I'll walk through the presentation. I save it, download it, send it. And I say, watch this, sign off that you've watched the training, and boom, we usually get 90% of the people watching the training within a very short period of time. Whereas if I would have had to coordinate a training, set up the day, set up the time, set up, it's a nightmare for our business because there's people everywhere. We're separated right now on 3 floors in 2 different buildings. So it's just, it becomes very difficult.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. That might not be a bad market to get into as well. Helping people record training modules so that they can, shoot it off to their employees, especially bigger companies. So
yeah, if you have the material, then absolutely, recording it is a huge component of it. And if you have people that are good at training and they're willing to go through the material and train people, I would definitely recommend recording it and sending it off for sure.
Right on. Time management. Time management like?
I always I always say you don't manage time, it manages you, right? Because like there's no way to control it. The other day I had meeting after meeting after meeting after meeting, and I was like, there is not enough hours in the day. For me, the key was having an assistant. When I hired an assistant to manage my calendar, that made a huge difference, because I was able to really be efficient with my time. In the past, I would double book, triple book when in inconvenient times, and so time management was better with that. But the second part, it keeps going back to that theme where you were asking about not doing what you're not good at. I've just realized things that I don't need to be a part of. One of the things that we have a tendency to do as CEOs, COOs, executives, visionaries, people that own businesses, is we think that we have to be involved in every single meeting. And you don't have to be involved in every meeting. So I opt out of a lot of meetings. My business partner will say, I have a marketing meeting tomorrow, and I'll tell them I'm not going to be there, because like I don't do marketing, I do operations, right? It's not that I'm not good at it. I'm pretty decent at marketing, and I was good at networking. That's the reason I had started my own firm and had 100 clients in 5 months. But that's not my passion. That's not my joy. And I want to work in my joy. Cameron Herold, I actually just came out on his podcast. The podcast is a COO Alliance podcast. And Cameron Herold, he always says, delegate everything but genius. If you're not genius at it, just delegate it. Find somebody who can do it. And so that's how I manage my time. I delegate everything that I really don't want to do, don't need to do, and someone else would do better. And that's how I've been able to have more time in my calendar to do things. And that's how I create margins so that I can do the things that I enjoy, such as working out, having dinner every night at home, and things like that.
Oh, I like that. I do. I like that. Man, I feel so overwhelmed at times, just because I'm like, I got a band, on this end, and I'm a singer in the band, and I'm having and I also sell the band. I luckily don't deal with the marketing end anymore, but like that's pulling me in this direction. And then Leduc Entertainment's pulling me in this direction. And then my acting career, and then family, of course, and then personal time. So all of these things juggling is just, so maybe I need to start with an administrative assistant.
Well, the interesting thing that the things that you're describing, acting, playing in the band, selling the band, and family, it's really hard to substitute some of those things, right? You can't find another you to come home and eat dinner with your wife and kid, right? Like that's probably not going to work,
Right. Wow.
So some of those, and you
I could hire some actors. I know some actors that could do it.
Right. But even, you follow, imagine you finding someone to be the actor to portray you at an acting gig. Like that doesn't even make sense. Like, so
that's a funny idea though. I got to write that down.
Yeah. So, find someone to play Armando at the acting gig, right?
Funny.
But it's so it makes it a little bit more difficult when you're actually required, right? When your physical presence is required. But that's why you have to ask yourself, do I want a job for the rest of my life, or do I want a business, right?
Right.
And if you want a job, if you want to have an acting job, you can make a lot of money having an acting job, right? There's actors who make 20 million a movie. You can make a lot of money having an acting job, but you have a job. That is not residual income. Now, if you had a $20 million check at one time, would you be happy and probably not care about residual income? Probably, but if you want a business, something that pays you perpetually into your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s until the day you die, and that you can give to your kids later, you need to create a business. You need to create something that produces a revenue stream. And you can't do that if you're the sole worker in your business, if you're the only person giving it everything that you have, because at some point there's only so much you can do.
Although, that's what, I mean, if somebody gave me, they said, hey, Armando, I'm going to give you $1 million. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to go, great. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to, I'm going to, pay all these people to like run the businesses. And then I'm going to go, I'm going to continue auditioning and acting. I'm going to write
Right.
and direct projects that are fun, and continue
Mm-hmm.
singing. I don't know if I'd sing every single weekend,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm doing
Right.
now, but I would like to, you know what I mean? Like sing once in a while, act in
Mm-hmm.
projects that I want to act in, write
Mm-hmm.
different projects. So those are the things that I want to do, which is why I kind of set my life up to revolve around acting, singing,
Mm-hmm.
and filmmaking.
But what, the interesting thing that you've mentioned though is that you just said if somebody gave me $1 million, you would actually go set up your business. That's what you just said. I'm going to set up my business,
right.
and then I'm going to do the things I enjoy, which is what you're saying is what I mentioned, which is you're delegating everything but genius. You're the genius behind the acting. You're the genius behind the singing. You're the genius behind those projects. And so you want to do that, and you want to delegate everything else so that somebody's selling the band for you. Someone is trying to get you on auditions, and someone's helping you with those other parts. So Leduc Entertainment is not being run by you, but being run by a team of people who are selling it, marketing it, and getting customers and clients. So, that's the thing. You can do both things. It's just you can't do them all necessarily at the same time.
Right. And so, did you find it hard to hire your people and keep them? Like, what was I guess the secret behind that? Like finding great talent.
The hardest part about business in general is people. They're the hardest part. Getting clients, believe it or not, is not actually that hard. You know how we know? Because there's trillions and trillions of dollars exchanged every year in business. There's trillions and trillions of dollars every year exchanged between people and products. I can go to the mall right now. My office is right across from the Lenox Mall here in Atlanta, Georgia, in Buckhead. And I can walk inside that mall, and I will find you people who have been convinced that a purse is worth $2,000. They've been convinced, and that they have the money to pay for it. It's easy to find clients if you have the right marketing, if you have the right ways to sell it. The hardest part is the people. Is how do you keep people? How do you train them and retain them and get them locked into your vision? So that's been absolutely challenging. What we've done is we've tried to develop a process like a hiring funnel that allows us to find the people that we want within the culture that we want. So we ask a lot of culture questions. And by culture, I don't mean like age or demographical things. It's what is the spirit of this person, and does it align? We use that word alignment a lot. Does the spirit of this person align? Are they a hard worker? Are they a person that's committed to helping people? Do they want to leave a legacy for themselves and for their family? Are they committed to helping the community? Do they want to be engaged in our nonprofit? Those are the things that align. Are they committed to growth? Do they respect people? Do they have a winning attitude? Do they trust? Do they have humility? Like when you start asking those questions, those probing questions, what do people do for fun and entertainment? And then you bring in aligned people and you train them properly, they stay. And so that doesn't mean everyone stays, because we make tons of mistakes in hiring the wrong people that are not aligned. But when we find the ones that are aligned, they stay for a long time. And we have employees who've been here 5, 6, 7 years. And so alignment is very critical in hiring the right people. But yeah, people are the hardest part.
Yeah, man. I've definitely gone through my share of employees, but I do have, I did bring a guy in from Loyola graduate editor, didn't know anything from the get. I was like, what are they teaching you in college? I don't know what they're teaching them in college. I really don't.
Yeah.
I think the problem with college too sometimes is that it goes back to, you got these cats that like grew up in academics, succeeded at academics, right? Are doing it all well, but like and they probably stayed within academics, right? They graduated from college, then they, went into teaching, and then they stayed sort of in teaching and never really had the real life experience. So then, you're learning from people that haven't necessarily done it. Books are kind of old on it. You know what I mean? The subjects are as fast as things are happening in 2020, and they're just getting faster and faster and faster.
Right.
You got all these kids that are in college that are like, what am I doing? I'm like learning archaic things. You know what I mean? Like, so when the guy comes in, I'm like, you don't know this? Like I told him, I was like, all right, you're gonna start becoming a freelance editor, right? Didn't know what that meant.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, all right, you're doing this project. Need you to send me an invoice. Doesn't know what an invoice is. Doesn't know how to send somebody an invoice.
Wow.
You know what I mean? I'm like, you want to get paid? Yes. Well, figure out how to send me an invoice. Figure out how to send me an invoice, and then I'll be able to pay you. Right? So it's just, it's these things that I'm just like, you know, and I guess because my business, you know, 2-3 years ago was sort of in its infancy, because I started out with Sketchy Characters Productions, and Sketchy Characters was like my creative based, you know, films and comedy and music and things like that. And then I was like, oh, well, let me, you know, I wanted to start moving into more corporate work, but I couldn't keep Sketchy Characters as the name. Nobody's going to write a check Sketchy Characters to, you know, to do my commercial. They might, but, you know, I just felt like Leduc Entertainment was a little bit more professional, you know. So maybe in the infancy, I was just like, yeah, I need people. And you brought this up in Atlanta too, is like, okay, how much are you spending? How much do you think you're going to spend on a receptionist? You know, and we're all like, oh, you know, $10, $11 an hour, which, you know, you were talking about that really isn't too far off of fast food or that sort of work, you know? So you want somebody that's going to stay consistent. Well, then you're going to have to, well, I'll let you explain that. Go ahead. You talk about that.
Yeah, no, I mean, you were hitting it on the head with that. You know, if you hire a receptionist at $10, $11, you know, once again, across the street at the mall, they can get a job working for Nike, which has no pressure, which they wear casual clothes. They don't have to show up 8 to 5. They can take off whenever they want to, and they're making $10, $11 an hour. So why would they come work here for $11 an hour in a professional state? And so the quality of the person that you're going to get, this has nothing to do, and please don't think that this has anything to do with the value of a human life, okay? Because I already could see somebody saying, oh yeah, that's not right, that's wrong to look at it. It's not about the value of a human life. Every human life is very valuable, and it's not about the worth of that person to their friends and family and even to community. We need to treat everyone with dignity and respect, regardless of whether they're the janitor or they're the CEO. Sure. But in terms of our economic system, you pay people for the value that they can provide. And whether a person's making $11 as a receptionist or $11 as working at Nike, as a shoe salesman, you know, working part-time, we have determined that the value that they can provide is $11 an hour, right? You're going to get more value out of someone who you have to pay $15 an hour. If a person comes into my office and they say, I will come be a receptionist for $20 an hour, and I hire that person, I'm going to expect a lot, right? Right. $20 an hour. You're gonna make $42,000 a year as a receptionist. You need to bring it, right? You need to every day. You need to have the highest, you know, answer rate. You need to have the best customer service, the most empathy, the biggest smile, the kindest service. But you wouldn't necessarily expect that from someone who is earning closer to minimum wage, and it has nothing to do with the value of them as a person. It has more to do with the value they bring from an economic standpoint. And how they view themselves.
You know, you bring up a good point. And I always thought about this. I had this theory because, you know, I grew up in Europe, and in Europe things are different. You know, things are not so capitalistic, and I'm all, look, I'm all about capitalism. All right, let's just get it out there now. You know, however, in Germany, like, if you're a waiter, you don't work for $2.13 an hour plus tips, right? Right. You get taken care of, right? Right. And they call it Trinkgeld, which is a tip, and that's drink money. They call it. It's just drink money. You know what I mean? Which is why you're not leaving 15-20% on a tip. You're just leaving them some change. That's it. That's what's expected. But the thing is, in exchange, they're getting taken care of. They got health insurance. They got benefits. They can go on vacation. They can do all of these things, and they have a quality life, right? And there's pride in waiting on tables, right? There's pride in being a janitor. There's pride in all of these different things. Doesn't matter if you're a doctor. Doesn't matter if you're this. Doesn't matter if you're that. Do what you do it well, right? And then, but make sure that you're getting taken care of in the process. That way you're not having to have 3-4 different jobs. Right? You have pride in what you're doing. So it's going to be, so you know it's going to be done right. And then everything else just kind of falls into place. But I think that's, you know, I think that's maybe this the mindset of America is like we put the dollar signs above the people, and that's maybe why we're in the situation that we're in. You know what I mean? Instead of like
it's a totally different concept for sure. In our concept, we pay people according to what they are willing to accept versus paying people necessarily for what the job is worth, right? If a person comes in and they're willing to accept a lower wage, a lot of times we end up paying them, holistically. I've always said that if the entire restaurant industry would be changed, if every waiter just said, I'm not working for $2.13 an hour plus tips. Imagine that. Imagine every waiter in America just saying, we are not waiting for $2.13 plus tips. We need $10 an hour. It would change because restaurants wouldn't be able to find anybody to work in the restaurant, But because there are people willing to do the job for $2.13 plus tips, things never change. And unless there's a societal change where they're required to, and that's just, it's a totally different, I've never been to Europe, so I can't speak on the mentality of Europe, but I do think it is a different mentality for sure.
I feel like, and now we might get political here. I don't really want to get political. I just want to talk about mindset, right? And I feel like the mindset of most Europeans is a community mindset. And I feel like the mindset of the American is more individualistic. It's about,
well, there's no doubt.
What's in it for me? I don't have to. Who gives a shit? Sorry, but in Europe, it's like, we're in this together. We're all experiencing life at the same time. You know what I mean? Like, we're all on this floating rock in space. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like, let's understand that we all have a part to play, and it's okay if you're playing your part. Great. If you're going to play your part, play your part. Be cool with that. You know what I mean? And and have pride in it. And let's not clown this guy because he's playing that part. Like, for instance, the guy from the Cosby Show. You remember him? Remember that? That was like about a year ago. He was working at Trader Joe's, and they were clowning him. I didn't hear that. Yeah, it was the boyfriend of Bill Cosby's daughter in the show, and they took a picture of him being a cashier at Trader Joe's, and then everybody was like clowning him about it, and then Tyler Perry got involved and was like, what the fuck is up, what's up with this? Like, why are you guys clowning this guy? Like, he's making a living, he's working, like, what is that? What's the mentality here that we have where we're like, oh, let's go ahead and clown people for not being what we think people should be, right? The celebrity status, the cars and the money and all of that stuff, and like, and continuing that level, that mindset of like, oh, we have to sort of, the status quo is this, and we all have to be sort of in this box. You know what I mean? And if you're not, well, then we're going to point and laugh. You know what I mean? Right. And that maybe comes in with the whole cancel culture as well. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like the whole pointing, let's get them. I feel like that's all connected somehow.
There's no doubt. I don't know the psychology of it, but there's no doubt there's a connection between a lot of these things. And like I said, never being to Europe, I don't know. Anything that I would say about Europeans would be completely anecdotal and not at all, scientific. But I do think that America in particular does value the individual to maybe such a degree that it becomes too self-serving. There's no doubt about that. Maybe it's too, to the point where economic status becomes the driving factor in all of our decisions. And so that can absolutely be a reason to tie us back into the original question of, delegating what you don't know how to do. We become fearful that if we tell someone we don't know how to do something, it's an attack on our own personality. True. And it's an attack on who we are. So, when you talk about the connection between everything, there's no doubt there's a connection between all of it.
That's a very good point. And that, that has opened you've opened my brain to like the culture. I hadn't thought about that. You know what I mean? Like I always hear about that, like, oh, what's the culture of the company? What's that? You know, and these buzzwords that are starting to emerge, you know, and I think, which is why like at Google you have, you know, you have these like playrooms and things like, do you guys have that? Do y'all have like a little playroom?
No, we don't, we're a little bit more stuffy, I guess, than Google, you know, just by nature of being a law firm, you know, there's a different expectation. Imagine a client walking in and you're playing ping pong while they're on crutches, you know. That would not work.
It doesn't work. Well, what I'm saying, but maybe in the bottom, you know, on another floor, you guys can, you know, have
in the basement,
have a break room. You ever heard of a break room? Not like, not a break room, but like a room where you have like a bunch of stuff and like bats and stuff, and you can like break things in this room. It's, I think
I'm scared of the liability of it, but it sounds like a good idea.
Man. You're such a lawyer, bro. Like I want you to think about the fun, you know, and see, that's some culture right there, bro. Like, all right, everybody, 2:00, we're gonna break stuff.
Right. It'd be interesting, that's for sure.
Kind of fun. Did y'all, when you guys are creating culture, did you write it down? Like, were you like, okay, this is sort of where we wanted to go, or did it organically develop?
I think at some point it's like a business plan. It's like a budget. You can write it down, but at some point it organically develops. You know, there are things, you know, you probably want to teach your kids a certain way of life, right? You want to teach them, but they're going to pick up things by the way you act and the way you behave that maybe you don't want them to pick up, right? And I think that's the way the organization is. You know, you want it to be a certain way and you want people to respond a certain way, but people are going to perceive it not always the way you want. And so I think it was a mixture of us writing down what we wanted and then a mixture of it happening organically. But I think the more you write it down and the more you are intentional about it, the more likely you are to get to the point where it's like the way you want it.
Right.
So
that's how I found my wife, actually.
Yeah.
Was Tony Robbins had done a course called Get the Edge. Have you heard of this?
I haven't.
So it's like a 7-day course, all on audiobooks. And one of the things he was talking about was, you know, you got to write it out, right? You know, like as far as like a mate that you're looking for, what you want, you know, and start boom, 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 boom. And, you know, I wrote it out and then boom, Shauna appeared and I was like, 5 out of 10 is pretty good. Just kidding.
Yeah, it's terrible.
But no, but she did. She hit like pretty much, you know, 90% of my list. You know, and I was pretty detailed about what I was looking for, and it was pretty amazing when you wrote it down, how things sort of like boom manifest themselves. Right now, I'm taking Bob Proctor's course on paradigm shift, and it's stuff that I've heard, you know, over the Think and Grow Rich and all the things like that. But you know, he just, you know, he talks about that, you know, it's just manifesting and not really thinking about why and the process of getting it. It's just, you know, living there ahead of time, you know, and not worrying about how you're going to get there. You know, if you're vibrating in that frequency, then it's going to happen.
I mean, I agree. You know, I do a lot of goal writing. I went about a whole year where I would write down my 10 goals every morning and every night. And I've kind of gotten away from that, you know, with COVID and everything. Just your patterns change in life. But I believe in trying to manifest the things in your life and, you know, speaking it into existence and writing it down and thinking about it, dreaming it, and trying to build it. And it's amazing how even when you don't reach it in a time frame, because, you know, time frames that we place on ourselves are really arbitrary, right? Because we have no way of knowing how long it's going to take for us to achieve. You know, if you say, I want to make $1 million a year, there's no way to determine that it's going to take 3 years to get there. Like, you could hit it in a year, you could hit it in 10 years. But the key is to manifest it through your thought process and really believing it. And people who believe will achieve it. But if you don't believe it, it's very unlikely you're going to hit it. you know? And so I'm a big proponent of that, writing it down, writing with specificity, getting pictures about it, and really speaking it and just believing it. I think it's huge.
Yeah, I mean that's what I you know, I teach actors too, and a lot of what acting is and the business of acting is mindset.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like there's a place for you. You know, if the breakdown is like, all right, I need a male actor, 30, 35 to 45, you know, this type, you know, Hispanic. And they send me out and I get into the audition room. Well, I have a shot there, right? So whether or not my mindset is on whether or not I can get it or not, that's immaterial. How, you know, how I'm going to get there is not more important than, I guess, the mindset of me just doing the work and trusting and believing that I'm the character, that I know what I'm doing,
right?
Trust the experience and, you know, my training and crafting and all of that stuff.
Right.
You know, and really understanding here first, and then being able to go in there and not have to worry about like all of those actor thoughts. What do they want? Am I what they're looking for? Trying, and that needy behavior, you know what I mean? Which is, you know,
right.
I mean, just, it just spans everything. Like, you know, you're not going to get a woman like that being needy. You know what I mean? You're not going to close sales like that being needy. You're not going to get roles. You know what I mean? Like things that you want, you will not get if you're so needy about it. You know what I mean? Like if you're holding on so tight, you know what I mean? Like you just need to have the confidence.
I agree.
That it'll happen. And it'll happen.
And what the thing, I agree with you 100%. You know, I think when you talk about that neediness, you know, what the reason we have that need to close a sale, get a woman, is because we have this, going back to the arbitrary time frame, right? If you told yourself, I have 15 years to find a woman, I have a whole 15 years. If that's what you wanted, right? You're not going to feel so pressured because you have 15 years. If you don't get them in year one, you get them in year. If I have a whole year to do my sales, do I have to worry about this particular sale? We don't have to feel so needy about it. Right. And it reminds me of like the rain dancer story. You probably heard the story where these rain dancers went out and they said, these people, they're the best. They always get the rain. And so they were out there dancing. They danced for like 60 days and finally it started raining. And someone came up and said, what's the secret to your success? And they say, we dance until it rains. We don't have a time. We dance until it rains. You know, are you working until you get your result? Are you in the gym until you get the desired body you want? Are you working in your business until you get the result, till you achieve what it is that you're trying to achieve? Or are you giving up before it rains? And I think that a lot of people give up too early. There are, you know, perfectly legitimate excuses for giving up. Perfectly legitimate issues for giving up. You know, people could have health troubles, run out of money, which, you know, could be related to that. But I think for the most part, a lot of people give up because of that mindset of not having the mindset for perseverance and longevity. And they weren't willing to dance until it rained. They went into it saying, if I don't make it within the first 6 months or a year, I'm quitting. Instead of saying, I am going to go until it rains. And that's the mindset you have to have.
I love that. I think that's a great ending point. I think that's a good way to wrap this meeting up, man. Always a pleasure talking to you.
Likewise.
You're a very, very smart guy. I really am proud of what you're doing over there in Atlanta. You and your family have always been really good to me. And so dope. I love it. I really enjoyed it. I think people are going to get a lot out of this conversation. And I think we should just continue doing this, man, because these truth bombs are good. It makes people think, inspires, you know, that's awesome. What, at the end of the day, that's what we want to do. So we're going to sign off.
I love it. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. You can look up Louis Scott. What's your Instagram handle so they can find you?
It's LUISR _ SCOTT. LUISR _ SCOTT.
There you go. And if you guys have been hurt in an accident, please contact Vader Scott Law Firm. Is that what you guys all is personal injury? What else you guys?
That's it. Personal injury, workers' comp, and car accidents. Yep, that's it.
Gotcha. All right, you've heard it here first, folks.
Thanks, man.
I'll see y'all later. Subscribe below if you guys like the content, and I'll see y'all next week.
See ya.